What we're doing here in our programming is talking about the workplace platform. So in the resources that you have that I'm going to show you on some websites, there are some things that can help you if people are interested in more about understanding mental illness and maybe specific mental illness issues, but that's not our focus in this program, okay? We're trying to talk about what could be going on in the way we've organized our work and the way we've managed our people in such a way that we could be creating mental harm. So, the message I had given to the morning group was just to say, look, this is our population. If 1 in 5 of us, not them, is going to be struggling with a mental health issue this year, that's pretty common. There may be, if we've got 40 people in the room, do the math, we're talking about 20% of our people here are going to be struggling through a mental health issue this year. If you're not, great, fantastic. But do you know of somebody in your family, in your close friendships, that does struggle with depression, anxiety, stress? Yeah. Our biggest challenge is getting people to talk about it and getting people to recognize that this is not a sign of weakness. This is not a sign of character flaws. This is a health issue. So if you're talking to somebody struggling with mental health, and that's a real a problem for you, a barrier to get around, why don't you think about them as if they were talking to you about their diabetes, or that they broke a leg. And maybe it's really more saying, let's talk about it from a health point of view. So stigma for us is going to be a big concern, and with these tools, some of them are going to be very sensitive to that, and some of them actually can help you with it. So we're speaking around this topic of this national standard. And the one thing I just want to lead to, and then we're going to leave it alone, is just the fact that this has been a lightning rod since 2013 that has generated growing and growing conversation around mental health in the workplace, which for those of us that sat on the team that wrote it, that's absolutely fantastic. We had no visions that every workplace was going to implement this standard. But there's nothing wrong with every workplace being able to look at it and take from it as it needs. Portions of it, aspects of it, even the conversations around it moves our organization forward in the area of mental health and mental harm prevention. It's got a 5-year lifespan. We released it in 2013. We've had more than 25,000 downloads to date, and it's free. So one of your homework pieces I'm going to ask of you is, again, on the resources we give you, IHSA.ca's website is where you can go and download a free copy of the standard. Okay, and as we said before, it's really going to be a framework for you to be looking at programs to implement mental health in the workplace. So guiding principles, and this is where the tools, the resources that we have are going to plug in as well. We see this as a shared responsibility. All parties in the workplace should be involved and actively participating in its development and in its execution, its monitoring. All of those things need to be part and parcel of how we set this up. Don't do this to your employees. Do this with your employees. Look at ways to be able to have demonstrations of the senior management commitment to this. Look for senior management to sponsor. Look for a champion. Look for leaders to champion, and that can be at any level within the organization. And championing, I mean, have talks about it. Share, discuss. You may have folks that are struggling with their own issues and actually would be quite vocal and want to share with you. That may be very helpful in helping people better understand what it's like to go through and deal with anxiety, depression, or stress. And also because there's a lot of really good stories, good news stories, success stories. Many of us that are struggling with a mental health issue can still function and still lead whatever normal means, but lives that are not necessarily confined to limitations. And those that do struggle and it gets worse, there are ways and other methodologies that do help, and people do recover. So it's also a lot of opportunity for folks to get a better understanding what it is that can be here and how people can best address that. It is a management system, so as such, if you decided to implement, you may already have different management systems. By all means, don't invent a new one. You can plug this one in. It's going to follow the same fundamental framework, And basically, it's a matter of changing scope in some of the implementation activities and the process you're going to use for your needs assessments. We want to focus on health and safety for sure. So it's psychological health and psychological safety. But because of the stigma, we also need to talk about promotion, awareness, and communication. So those are going to be key factors as we go forward. So as we said before, for those that have saw the standard and have reviewed it and said, wow, you know what, that's quite a complex plan and program, I'm not sure I'm ready to bite all of that off. One of the things you may want to think of is focusing around sort of the hazard assessment and control piece. And really that can start in the conversations around dealing with the 13 organizational factors that the research indicated that these are going to be our leading contributors to toxicity, an unhealthy workplace. But when we manage these well, these are the high performance drivers that help us create an engaged workforce, a highly productive, high performance, a passionate workforce. I don't know about you, but every so often I would wander my way into places like Chapters or Indigo. You go look at the books on the shelves, and there's a whole section on business and on leadership and on management process and all those sort of things. Do you ever see those? You look at them, and we're reading somebody's book about how they turned their company around and what's it like to live at Google or all these other sort of weird and wonderful things. Let me save you the cost of a book. That's it. You know what? They paid attention to these things. And so we created an environment that, you know what? We want to treat people the way we would like to be treated. We hire for attitude. We are fair. We are just. We are looking for people that are passionate, and we got to make sure we don't burn that passion out by then inflicting our workplace upon them. So I don't want to put Chapters out of business. Go find another book. You know what? The new Game of Thrones book's got to be coming out soon. So we got to get the next chapter out, don't we? So these 13 risk factors are really going to be the emphasis of a lot of the tools that we're going to go through. Let me quickly just take you through, okay? So in the organizational culture piece, we're really talking about, no surprises, core values, beliefs, and principles. If I was going to distill that down, I was going to say more about saying, this is how we do things around here. And that's usually observed by behavior. So how we treat each other, how we work, all those sort of fun things are part and parcel to this organizational culture that we have. Psychological and social support. Our emphasis here was what do we have both in the formal and on the informal side that's creating a supportive environment for our staff. So if somebody may be struggling with an issue, does HR have the adequate tools to be able to support? Or we have benefits, or we have drug plans, or we have EAP programs. What are some of those mechanisms that we may formally have? As an organization, maybe we don't have that kind of resource. We're smaller, we may be less sophisticated, less resourced. Fair enough. Then what does the community offer that you could plug your employees into to help them if they need that? That's kind of the formal side of things. But also look at the informal side. Do we have an environment of team? Do I have what's called a supportive manager? So does an employee, if they're struggling, feeling that if they go to their supervisor, not that the supervisor is going to make the world perfect, but at least they're being heard, and they're being supported, and they're being, again, somewhat able to feel that their message is being valued. So that informal side is just as important as the formal here. If you're interested in pursuing some of those conversations further, you may want to Google a process called the Gallup research. It was done a number of years ago, and they came up with what's called the Magic 12 or the Fantastic 12. But basically what they were doing was they were trying to figure out how and why do certain organizations, are they able to attract the high performance people and keep them? What's their secret? Well, they hadn't had this stuff yet. But they looked at the research and they basically came through and through a bunch of their different trial and errors, actually came up with a series of questions that would really make an excellent employee engagement survey. And you may want to Google and just have a look at that. But here's one of the key findings. People don't leave companies. People leave managers. So if I've got to focus somewhere, What do you think I should be focusing on? I should be focusing on leadership. And in my mind, leadership can be in any areas within an organization. Because I'll tell you one thing, I come from manufacturing. One of our typical ways for how we have people in supervisor roles and manager roles, we hire from within. And we promote maybe from the shop floor in most cases. So I've got a department full of carpenters. I need a supervisor of the carpentry department. Who do I go and get? Probably one of my carpenters. On top of that, probably my best carpenter. You do a really good job of this, so I'm going to make you supervisor. Now I've asked somebody to move into a new role, and I don't necessarily give them now the tools to do the job. They don't need to be a good carpenter anymore. They need to be a good manager. We said supportive. We said empathetic. We said things like emotional intelligence. You said that to what? To the carpenter? It's going to say, where does my tri-square fit into this conversation? So we put people into these roles, but we don't necessarily give them the tools to kind of support that. So this is kind of the things you're kind of looking for to say, okay, how do we address some of this? Clear leadership and expectations. I'm not sure I need to describe this at all, but this is really talking about, does everybody know what they're doing, why they're doing it, and how they fit into the big picture? Does everybody have clear objectives? Am I reporting to one boss? Do we have mandates that are very specific for people so that we can minimize confusion? Now that may be a bit utopia, but by the same token, what we are trying to do is making sure that people have a sense of where they're going today and how are they and what we're asking them to contribute to. We're asking leadership to become more. We're asking them to think about transformational leadership. We're asking them to think about their role as mentor, as coach, not policeman. How do we help people get where they need to get to? And look at how do I transition, what does that look like when I interact with my staff? Civility and respect. 5 years ago, a significant piece of legislation came into Ontario. We were one of the last jurisdictions to get it, but it was all around workplace violence and harassment. The other jurisdictions around the country, including you under the feds, there was already stuff being played about workplace violence and harassment. Here's the typical type of response, though, we would get from some of our membership. One, tell me what I need to do so that I'm complying with the law. Okay, that's this. But what I was much more interested in is, tell me what I need to do to make sure that nobody ever has to use our reporting system for workplace violence, our reporting system for harassment. That's what civility and respect is talking to. What are you doing? What are you putting in that are really the rules of engagement? How do people treat each other? How do they behave? And when you think about it, if I have a very strong sense of what that is, I have a much better chance at early detection if somebody veers away from that or goes off the rails. And hopefully it's before we actually have to have a harassment incident. But we say, hey, you know what, that's behavior that's not accepted here. We need to correct that. So civility and respect is all about how do we set up those rules of engagement. You may have codes of ethics. You may have other tools that you put in place that basically can help people say, hey, here's where we are and here's what fits for us. Now, we're not talking about creating fairyland with pixie dust. We're just saying, look, just here's the rules, folks. Here's how we want to behave. And these are the things that are accepted. These are the ones that aren't. Psychological demands. This was one of the more challenging areas to talk about when we were developing the standard. The first title we had given it was psychological job fit. And it really kind of sounded like we were going to be trying to screen out all of the mentally ill people before we had them do the job. And it really kind of missed the focus here. I'd like you to think about when you are looking in workplaces now, think of your ergonomics program as probably a good driver for this. You would do things like physical demands analysis. And you would be basically trying to get a handle on how long would somebody be sitting, how long would they be standing, how much movement are they doing, what's the pace of work, what's the cognitive skills, are they interacting with equipment, what sort of technical skills are they going to have to be able to exhibit, all kinds of things that we're really talking to them about how they could physically now do that work. What this is asking you to do is the same kind of inquiry, but from the psychological side. So, does pace of work, does the type of working condition, does the isolation working alone, does the type of client that you're interacting with, does the type of process you're involved with, what are those things doing to either challenge or create psychological hazard or issue in the workplace? That's really what this is all about. So in essence, it's giving you a better picture, a more clear picture of what the environment is that your worker, your employee is now working to. Growth and development. So within this piece, this does fit into our basic human needs concerns. So where am I going to be in 2 years, 5 years? How do I fit in? Where do I see myself going? In today's world, this may be one of our more challenging issues to talk about because we don't necessarily have those very deep and structured org charts like we used to have in years gone by. And I could kind of plot my way up the org chart as to where I might be if I was being promoted and such. In organizations today with much more flat management systems and organizations, maybe that's not there. But what we do mean about growth and development may be within the job. Maybe different tasks, and maybe more about things like job enlargement. They may be transitions. But the topic is still critical. The issue is still important. So really now what we want to look at is how are we supporting this type of concern. Recognition and reward. This is all about fairness. This is all about, I feel that for, if I'm honestly investing a good blood, sweat, and tears into the work, that I'm being adequately rewarded for that. You notice we're not talking about salary or wage. That's a component, but it's bigger than that. It may be recognition, it may be acknowledgement, it may be promotion, it may be prestige, it may be you become my go-to person, all those sort of kinds of things that are reflective of, hey, that was excellent work. It may be nothing more than a pat on the back. But it's the balance that comes with that, the social justice piece. This is insidious in a workplace where we feel that there is a social injustice. How come that individual always seems to get the reward and I do all the work? I mean, that's the stuff that really starts to pick away at a culture of fairness. Involvement and influence. So this is a lot to do with that whole aspect of I have a say in what's going on. And the more that I have the ability to manage and take a hold of what I do in my work, the evidence shows us that the better I can handle the work and in fact exceed maybe expectations. This isn't good for those that like to micromanage, because this is really the epitome of the opposite of that. How do we help people be able to do what they can do? Workload management is a reality today. We know, we hear it all the time about doing more with less. But really this is asking for what mechanisms do you have in play that can help people contribute to what the workload is? If I go to my supervisor, if I go to my team, can I get support from them when I think I've got excessive workload at this point in time? Can you help me prioritize what I need to do? What can we set aside? It's being able to have those kinds of conversations. Engagement. For those of you that have customer-facing staff, this is the absolute critical component for you. You need to make sure that your customer-facing staff are going to be passionate about you, your company, your service, everything that you're doing, because that's what customer service is all about. But engagement goes right down through the whole organization. People need to feel, again, that sense of belonging. That's a basic human need. If I'm disconnected, I become differing levels of disengagement, and those are the kiss of death in a workplace. I can probably get by on about 40 to 45% of what my job description says I should be doing. Getting below that, I start to get into situations where you become in the attention of the management group, and you got a performance plan, and you got all those sort of things. But when you take a look at where people can be basically disengaged, that can be a fairly low performance level, and that's difficult to turn around. We don't want people at 100 and 120% either. We want people to be able to work within it, but the best thing we want is somebody to be able to say, you know what, I absolutely love what I do. And not that I love to come to work per se, but I'm glad to be here. It's a good place for me to be. I can't think of much of a worse position to be in as when you get up in that morning, or they get up after your sleep, and you're looking forward and saying, okay, I cannot imagine me getting through another day of this. So what can we be doing to support engagement? Balance. I said this to the first group. I have a little surprise for you. New piece of news we just discovered. Workers are people. Man, who would have known, eh? So guess what? People, we have lives. We have families. We have dependents. We have interests. We have all kinds of things that go outside of your workplace. Believe it or not, life exists outside of your workplace. And we need to make sure that we acknowledge that and address that when we do talk about the load that we put on our staff. Notice we didn't say work-life balance as much. it's really about work-life equality. And in some cases, that may come down to a one-on-one kind of conversation. So it's not so much that, saying automatically all the BlackBerries and the computers shut off at 5 o'clock and they don't turn on again until 7 in the morning. It doesn't have to be that regimented. But what we are saying is, what do you have in balance so that you can deal with your comfort level in the work that you do as that relates to the other things that are part of your life? This is, I think, one of the most important ones. So if I was going to start anywhere, this one and the next one, I think, are where I absolutely would want to invest my time and effort. Psychological safety, psychological protection, it's all about creating an environment free of fear. I have these different systems. I have reporting mechanisms. I even have legal obligations about reporting unsafe conditions and all that sort of fun stuff. But if I don't feel safe to be able to put my hand up and say, I don't like this, I don't think this is right, I would like to suggest that we do something else, I want to be able to do that without a fear of recrimination or a fear of penalty or a fear of dismissal. And that is absolutely critical. People need to be in an environment where fear isn't driving the conversation. And then the last one is around the protection of physical safety. This is all about survival. And so, first of all, innately, you're programmed to want to protect your physical safety. If you're in an environment where that is in any way challenged, it supersedes all other conversations. So I need to ensure that the physical safety piece of our workplace is stable. Trying to talk to people about engagement and other aspects of what they're doing in their work when I'm worried about the fork truck you put me on that doesn't have any brakes, or the machine that you asked me to operate knowing that you've disengaged the guarding systems. Those are much more in-my-face concerns than getting into the other 12 risk hazard factors first. And both of those environments are workplaces that I've been in, and it's been the accepted workplace culture that said, don't worry about it. Here, I'll show you how to operate the fork truck with no brakes. Here's what you do to keep your hands out of the machine. We got bigger problems. It's not bigger problems. We got more urgent problems to be able to get those resolved before we can then start to have these next conversations. Okay. This, I think, is one of the best tools in the package for you to go forward with. So if you've now delved into is as far as you want to go within the standard, and that's about it. I hear what you're saying, but you know what? Maybe we're not ready to go deep into all of that further applications. If you looked at those 13 organizational factors and said, I'm not sure where we are with that stuff. So if I treat every one of those as a hazard, then guarding minds at work is basically a RAC tool. It's a recognition, assess, and control guide for psychological hazards. And so it has resources and tools within it that can help you spread the message, raise awareness, get to readiness. It has tools to help you do the assessment portions. So there's 2 survey tools, and then there's what they call a process or policy and program review, which is kind of like a gap analysis tool that you can use to look at your existing HR policies and health and safety programs. And it allows you to now compare it against the 13 factors in a way that you now can come back with an action plan supportive of how you would want to either support the high-performing factors that you already have in play, but also help you deal with the ones that are weaker and need urgent help. So this is kind of one-stop shopping. This can help you in communication, this can help you in assessment and understanding needs, but it can also help you in terms of taking action. This is website-based. At present, it's housed on the Canadian Centre for Occupational Health and Safety. But basically, all you need to do is Google Guarding Minds at Work, and you'll be going into their website. It's free. Actually, it's prepaid, I think is a better way to explain this. The people that have been all around psychological health and safety in this country have been very generous in trying to remove barriers of cost to workplaces in resources. And so here's an example of one where this was not cheap, and it's not cheap to maintain it. But it's no cost to you to use it. And so, again, highly recommended that we kind of go into this. What else we like about it? It's evidence-based. It's Canadian, it's current, it's got the research behind it that said these things are good for us. It's accessible. We're going to assess it either two ways. One, through your computer, the internet. Two, you can download material into hard copy and you can work that way. And it's also in French English. So there's some good resource that way. The universality to it, it doesn't apply to any particular province or jurisdiction. So literally when it's on the internet, anybody, anywhere, if you can speak English and French, you can pull down and make use of these tools, okay? So it's got a format that you can follow. In the area of assessment, so up to this point in time, I've done the communications, I've helped here at my organization. We really want to take a deeper dive and try to understand what kind of psychological health and safety hazards we might have in our workplace. We're at a stage of readiness. Now we want to get out there with pen and paper in hand and we've got to figure out where are we. I have two tools available to me on the assessment side as a survey piece. There's one that's called the initial scan. This is a 6-question scan. If any of you came from the days of Healthy Workplace through Health Canada, you may remember the stress satisfaction offset score tool. That was 4 questions. And it was a way to kind of look at in a relatively quick and dirty way, get assessment of where our stress levels as an organization were. This tool is an evolution from that, and 2 new questions have been added in to not only talk about job demands and reward, job demands and control and effort reward, but also support and respect and justice in the workplace. So that's the initial scan piece, and that can be a good way for you to maybe go out and do some initial type of exploration. You'll probably want to spend more time in the employee survey. That's 68 questions long. Please don't tell your staff that. Tell them it'll take them less than 10 minutes to go through this, and there's a free coffee waiting for, I don't know, but it is not huge to go through that. But that survey can be done online. So literally you can go in, set up the survey as an administrator. Your staff can now go into the website, go through the password, and then they can now do the survey online. The beauty of this is that when you click end, you're going to get the analysis of the survey results all through the website being sent back to you. So for those of you who have had to manage surveys in the past, you know one of our biggest challenges is what do you do with the data? The data crunching and analysis, and the cost of doing that can be quite excessive. Here you've got a system that will do that for you. And what you'll get back is a report based on those 13 factors, and on top of that, suggested action items that can be used to apply against each of the factors that you've identified. So if you weren't quite sure, boy, you scored really low in civility and respect, here's some suggested actions that you could utilize to make that happen. Really sweet, really sweet. And it does some neat things for us as well. Confidentiality, privacy, anonymity. You're sending your employees to a third-party site that you have no access to, no control of that data. Everything that we get back, and we'll be confirming that with our staff, is aggregate. So we're not going to hear about your personal medical usage or concerns. It'll be an aggregate. So it's a great way for us to reassure people that their privacy is being protected. Now, I may be a smaller organization, or I may have folks that don't have access to computer. You can download the tools and you can use them in hard copy. You give up that little bit of the data crunching piece, but again, maybe you have a third party that actually does the uploads for you, and you could take advantage of it that way. But you can certainly download the tools and use the hard copy versions. It just takes a little bit away from that privacy, confidentiality, and anonymity component, but you'll have to build some other pieces in to support that. This is really sweet. This is really a very helpful tool for us to get forward with. Now, on the employer audit, this is a tool, again, that you can download and set up a team. We've got HR people, we've got health and safety people, we've got security people, you may have finance people. Put a small team together and say, okay, you know what we're going to do? We're going to take a look at each of our policies and programs and resources and tools that we have in present, and we're going to compare them to each of those organizational factors. And we're basically going to look at saying, do we have that kind of mechanism in play to help us along? I can pair that results up with what I'm going to get from my survey results. I've got a good starting point for what I could now be doing for program build, okay? We can get action responses, the action planning sheet. When you're ready for it, there's also an evaluation component where you can then go back and say, okay, how well did we do on these initiatives? One-stop shopping. Okay, so again, this is kind of the Cadillac. This one is really helpful out there. There are other tools, don't get us wrong, but as I said, from the ease of access, the usability, the comprehensiveness, the parties that were involved, also some of them were on the technical committee to write the standards, so there's a lot of good alliance here. When you go to the website, this is kind of what you're going to get on the first page. You're going to get this menu always beside you, so it's really kind of nice that you really can't get lost in this website. You can always come back. You notice that there's a descriptors around what I just took you through on the psychological factors, organizational factors. There's additional resources. There's the assessment tools down in here. There's also some guides around preparation. So really there's a lot in here that can be quite helpful for what you want to go for. FAQs, if you're looking to be able to share this with others in the organization, this can help you anticipate where the questions can come from. Really well thought out. Here's a sample of the questions you're going to see on the FAQs. Okay, so again, the typical kinds of things that you may be running into when you're going to talk to colleagues or possibly talking to your staff about getting it in play. There is a little bit of an opportunity to do some segmentation. So you may have a need to want to, maybe you've got different locations physically. You may want to look at different departments, some of those sort of aspects. There are some built-in protectors to make sure that you don't dissect this down too far where now we may be able to identify who the responder is. I think the cutoff is 10. So once you get down below that, we can't really guarantee the anonymity pieces. But you know, if we got different departments or different locations, that may be helpful for you. You can also do some things about adding some questions in if you see fit and customizing it with your company logos. There's options that allow you for that piece as well. We're not recommending a lot about customizing questions. I'm going to suggest take a look at the questions first and make sure that you're not already asking that in maybe some different ways. Next tool. This is called Omni Agenda. It's connected a little to the Guarding Minds at Work, but it is a separate tool. This one comes from the Workplace Strategies for Mental Health, and this is an educational tool. On the agenda, you have a PowerPoint presentation for each of the 13 organizational factors. But on top of that, you have a facilitator's guide and accompanying videos that go with each of the factors. So you could use this tool in a couple of ways. You could be looking at, this is a great training tool in general for lunch and learn type sessions with staff, and we just take them through the 13. Here's a PowerPoint presentation, here's a video piece, and my instructor, here's your facilitator's guide. Plug and play, off you go. Another way that you can use this tool is you get the results back from your Guarding Minds at Work survey, and you identify where your high priority factors were, and you plug in those on the agenda accompanying PowerPoint and resources, and they become your starting points to now implement your action plan. I got my assessments done, I got a lesson plan, make it happen. So it's really quite sweet. Again, prepaid. You can download this from the Workplace Strategies for Mental Health. It's trying to create discussion frameworks. It's trying to help people work through the concepts. It's intended to be for all stakeholders, so you can be doing this with your management and worker groups. But it really is trying to help people sort of gauge and build what the awareness and understanding is around the topic here. Again, we're not talking about dealing with mental health specifically. So we're talking about process, the systems, the bigger picture pieces. So this isn't going to be a mental illness guide or anything along that lines. There are resources on the website that for somebody that is struggling with mental health themselves, that they can go to another section. So it does talk about how people can get access to treatment in different ways, because that's not the intention of these programs. So again, if you were using Guarding Minds at Work, we could match it up to your survey results. If you were doing it by yourself, you simply choose where your priority areas are going to be. Okay, next one. This is from the Workplace Strategies for Mental Health website. This is completely funded through Great West Life, but it's for everybody, not just their subscribers. On this site, you can do a number of things. You can get involved in implementing the standard, and there are resources associated with that. Right now, I'm taking you into the area around training and skills and resources available, and I've opened up a program called Managing Mental Health Matters. This is a leadership program. So anybody that's in the area of providing leadership, supervision, or management, this is an excellent training course for them to go through to help them better understand psychological health and safety. It's a video-based program. There's a number of resources that they can be utilizing as downloads, but basically it's very much a storytelling type of training piece. So each module is going to have a progression of the story through video and some learning pieces that you can then work through. This can be done collectively or it can be done one-on-one. So you could have each of your leadership team, they could be going through this on their own timelines, and they could work through this when it fits for them. So it has that availability for you. This is also prepaid. So this is something that you would do to equip leadership, like just in general. You want to help on psychological health and safety.
Where do I access? Where can you access?
So this is the Workplace Strategies for Mental Health website. Okay. Now again, don't worry, guys. It's on the handouts. It's there for you. Okay. And you'll have my name in case you get lost in there. But absolutely, Workplace Strategies for Mental Health. And this is again an excellent tool that we can talk about to help equip leadership with a better understanding of psychological health and safety. So it's very adult learning oriented. So you basically drive your own learning and pace. And as I said before, it's a story. So it's really going to kind of look at following more or less real life examples, okay, and seeing how this kind of progresses out. So it's not this huge textbook driven type of process. It's very experiential, and the success with that has been quite promising. So something for you to consider. Working through it. This is more intended for folks that are struggling with mental health issues specifically. So this would be a good resource that a leader, a supervisor, a joint health and safety committee member, when somebody's coming to you and saying, you know what, I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm not feeling myself, I'm struggling. This was designed to help people kind of do a little bit of that sort of I don't know what I want to call it, self-discovery, but these are a whole bunch of little video vignettes, real life scenario conversations with people that are struggling with anxiety, stress, and depression. The story is you don't know what it feels like unless you've gone through it yourself. So this is folks that have gone through it themselves, and really it's a way for that individual that's kind of trying to figure out where are they right now, okay? So I wouldn't necessarily call it a training tool. I think it's a step towards helping people get to the needs of helping them that are struggling with the issues themselves, okay? Same website. Workplace Strategies for Mental Health. The next one, Mental Health First Aid. This comes through the Mental Health Commission of Canada. This is a first aid course, literally, okay? So we want to equip people in your company to be able to provide psychological first aid in the event that somebody is having an issue in their workplace right now. So think about when you send your people for their St. John's or for their WSIB first aid training. We don't train them to be doctors. They're not paramedics. If anything, they're triage. They're trying to help to make sure that we can get somebody stabilized into the help that they are going to need when they have a physical injury. But this is the same kind of thing on the mental side, on the mental health side. So what you would be doing was having somebody that's now going to be trained to better understand the different types of mental health issues so that they can better guide somebody to the professional help that they may need. That may be internal, through our own HR, through our own benefits, through our own programs. Or it may be, we don't have those things, let's help connect you to the community. So this is really that first responder in the psychological health and safety point of view that you could be putting in play. If you were implementing the standard, one of the things we talk about is critical event response. What do you have in play to support when somebody is struggling? This would be that kind of support. One of the stats we get out of the St. John's and others in terms of the traditional first aid courses is that when we feel people go through those training courses, it also raises their awareness about general health and safety. So you could expect some of those side benefits as well may be relevant here. So this is, again, equipping people to better understand what's going on in their workplace, more sensitive to behaviors that they're seeing, experiencing with their colleagues. So what we do in the program is talk a lot about where the mental health issue is, so that it's not that it's in common, that it's part of life these days. We don't necessarily have professional help readily available instantly, so can we help deal with that? We may not know collectively what we are supposed to do, so here's a way again to create a knowledge base. We know that with the stigma associated with mental health, that anything that's being done to raise awareness and extend communication can be helpful, and people trained in this program can be part of that resource for you. Not everybody needs to go to the full lengths of treatment. Maybe there's other aspects that we can help people through. They may lack insight to actually know that they're in trouble. So this is also a way for folks to be able to maybe pick up on that sort of thing. And some people don't necessarily know what resources they have available to them. Sorry. Who can take it? Literally anybody. I wouldn't necessarily suggest that all of your employees would go through this, but don't rule it out. But basically, you think about it in terms of how many people you put through your St. John's first aid training, and look at it more along that line. So base your needs on what your organization is going to have. It's evidence-based. Originally came from Australia, although it's been owned now by the Mental Health Commission of Canada with evaluation and reviews by Canadian experts. It's really first aid actions is the basis of it. A very strong, rigorous instructor. It's a 5-day course for an instructor to go through and actually to deliver this. You are required to stay with the course, so you can't change it. For those attending the course, it's 12 hours. So it's usually 2 6-hour sessions, 4 modules, but basically, depending on who you take it with, they can offer that. There's some flexibility on how you deliver it, but it's basically a 12-hour course.
So who does?
You can, WSPS, we can provide it, but you can also go to the Mental Health Commission's website, and they have a list of instructors and when their next public courses are. Okay, so that's one way. What we offer is, if you're interested, we can cater and come on site to do that. So if you wanted to set your own schedule rather than a public, that's an option for you as well. Some of the different public health units in your community may be offering it. Okay, but probably your easiest way for those that are not, say, local to the GTA is, check the website for the Mental Health Commission of Canada, and you can see the roster of the upcoming courses. Okay.
How much cost is it compared to regular first aid?
I don't know what the regular first aid cost is today. Does anybody offhand know?
First aid, you need 10 people in the class, it's $1,500.
So about $200 a person?
I paid $70.
$70 a person?
Emergency first aid.
Okay, so for the course here, the Mental Health Commission of Canada doesn't set the price, so it really can be up to the instructor. I've seen it as low as $85, and I see as high as about $350. The average price is around $250 to $300 per person. And again, depending on if you're going to do, if you are doing volume, then you can work out with the instructors. It'll be up to them to determine how much they want to address. But that's one way we would do it as well.
How much is the 5-day course?
$3,000.
$3,000.
It's $3,000. That's set by the Mental Health Commission of Canada. They do the training.
Yes.
So if you are a larger employer and wanted to do the instruction on an ongoing basis, you may want to create your own instructor. And that's a 5-day course and $3,000. They have there's a test to it, so it's pretty rigorous.
Yes.
But that is one option available to you.
And no background, no.
Yes, you do. There are some prerequisites. There has to be some level of interest and experience in the area of mental health. Okay, they aren't saying that you had to be a nurse or a doctor in the first place, but if you go to the website and if you look at the criteria, it's very well laid out, and it can give you an idea of whether or not being an instructor is something that you want to do. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Let me just talk about what it isn't. Okay? So it doesn't come with a coach. You're not going to be a therapist, just like you aren't going to be a doctor in the other programs. These are really trying to help us act as more of a first responder. Okay? We need to pay attention no matter what tools we end up using, that stigma is going to be a major concern. So communication strategies, awareness, the messages that you set through your language, through your behavior, these are all part and party to help us better get at understanding and getting to the roots of the psychological hazards and issues in our workplaces. Please don't discount this. Stigma is going to be a major hurdle all through your program, whether it's at the initial discussions, it's implementation, it's assessment, it's corrective actions, it's going to be there, and you want to pay attention to it. You want to find ways to be able to help drive that out. One of the best ways is communication, it's talking. I'll leave this as a slide, but this is a really neat little tool that you could literally sit down with your Joint Health and Safety Committee, your staff, your teams, and just say to ourselves, okay, based on these 5 pieces of criteria, awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, where do we rate ourselves when it comes to psychological health and safety? And this little scoring mechanism can really kind of act as an initial raw action plan for you of where you want to go to get started. You know what, if our awareness is low, then let's not get into surveys yet. Let's start talking about raising the level of understanding. And things like Managing Mental Health Matters is an excellent tool to help my leadership people better understand the issue. What are our resources? If we don't have them, where can we get resources? The beauty of this topic is that the resources I've shared with you and many, many others are free. They're prepaid. So the cost of having to develop a tool should not be an issue for you. If anything, it's where do I put all these tools that are out there and how do I make them work? And organizations like us, we can help you do that. But there really is a wealth of that kind of resource out there. Knowledge, what's the internal knowledge? Do we have to develop any of those sort of things? So you can basically use this as a really great litmus test. What do we need to do first? So it's in the slide deck. You can play with that as you see fit, okay? So these are the resources we've talked about. So on the slide deck, you'll have this slide, and in my resource material, you'll have this slide. These are the websites. The resource material takes you a little bit more specifically and highlights some other tools. Guarding Minds at Work and Mental Health also has tools like building the business case. So if you're trying to convince people from either the legal, financial, health, ethical, this is the right thing to do, there's excellent resources to guide you along there as well. And those are in my package that I'm going to leave with you. Homework. If you haven't got your copy of the standard yet, please go to the website, download it, have a look, have it as a resource. You may not be adopting it all, but I'll tell you what, it's a great tool for us to start to continue to grow this conversation. With that, I thank you. I know we've gone over time a little bit. I'm certainly willing to stay and answer any questions, but I'm in between you and lunch, so I know that that could be a problem. So I thank you for your time. Enjoy the rest of the afternoon.